myself? Okay, so I'm just starting the Facebook Live, and then we'll give ourselves another minute here in the Zoom room to get ready. And so if folks are on my Facebook, we're going to be talking, it's an extension of this morning, basically, where we were talking about differentiation in the early years. And now we're going to be talking about how do we do lesson design to get ready. All right, let me pause that. And it's really about how to embed tiered instruction. So earlier today, so we're live at the Circle Makers Summer Academy, and I've got some amazing circle makers here with me in the Zoom room. And we're going to talk about how we actually deliver specially designed instruction, how we cover the content of the curriculum, all through how we design lessons. And so we just finished an hour or just about an hour with the larger group, just talking about lesson design in general, about the arc of a lesson, how we can open and close a lesson. This is really important for those of you who are itinerant, those of you who are co-teaching, is to not think of that I can't co-teach if I don't have the full block with them, meaning the full lesson or the full activity. I know when I was an itinerant teacher, it was really hard to get to circle time of my different classrooms because everybody had circle time at the same time. And so there was always one classroom that by the time I made it to them, it was nap time. And it was like, how am I supposed to do specially designed instruction during nap? And so it's hard when you're thinking about schedules. And so I had to think about, oh, my lesson design or my differentiation comes in the planning with that teacher. I'm never going to be in her classroom for the delivery of circle time, but I can certainly work with her or with him or with them to design a tiered activity. So that was kind of the premise of what we started with. Then we talked about what before how. And now we're going to get a little bit more into what does lesson design look like in the early years, especially if you're doing integrated content. By that, I mean, we don't just teach reading and then we teach science and then we teach social studies. If you're really integrating those subject areas, and fingers crossed, even those of you who are elementary and first grade, that you're much more play-based than you are seat work. How do you design a lesson that is still child-led? Because it's like, I'm going to follow children's lead. I'm going to let them stay in engaged, sustained play, but I'm going to plan it. It sounds like an oxymoron or it sounds like a big paradox, right? So that's our challenge in our hour together is how do we do what before how? Do lesson planning and delivery that may be in different co-teaching configurations where we are together virtually or asynchronously or at the same time. And how do we still hold on to lessons that are child-led, child-directed, play-based, and planned? That's a lot to do in an hour, but that's my kind of hope is what you'll leave with. And so if you took some notes and you're like, oh, we're going to learn more about how to really pull this off, and it's 40 minutes later and I haven't touched on something, I'll just ask that if you're here with me in Zoom, you're always welcome to unmute yourself. You're also welcome to use the chat. If you're joining us at any point in Facebook, just use the comments and I'll come back and check both of those, okay? Now, I also told the group here at Summer Academy that many of the resources are on their dashboard. So I will be showing and sharing links on the dashboard. And then this weekend, I'll come back and add those to the Facebook Live thread so that you have them as well, okay? All right, here we go. So let me share my screen. And again, for those of you who are with me live, it's not rude to type while I'm talking, and it's also not rude if you want to leave or need to leave at any time or come back. I'll watch for you in the waiting room. So just use your hour in any way you want. And even if I say your name, I'm not going to call on you. It's just that I know you three, so I may say your name. But if you're multitasking or you have to walk your dog, don't worry, I'm not like outing you on Facebook. Okay, here we go. So let me close up a few things. And this is a slide we saw this morning where we said, okay, what does work when you have diverse learners and you only have one adult or maybe two adults, but even those two adults aren't together all the time, is that we do differentiation, which is where we tier or target different outcomes in the same activity. We change the frequency of how often we teach different skills, and that's going to be a big focus of what we talk about in this hour. And the level of our precision, which means I can accidentally teach it or I can really intentionally teach it. And I want you to know both are important. Sort of incidental learning, we call it sometimes the unintended curriculum. How many times have you that write IEP goals written an IEP over the weekend? You start servicing the kid and they already can do it. You're like, but wait, you didn't do it during the evaluation. I just wrote this IEP that's supposed to be good for 1 year, and now you can do it. And so it's this idea of sometimes kids learn stuff, even if we don't want them to, even if we haven't started instruction. And sometimes kids don't learn stuff, even with the very best planning. So I want to give you some grace on this third one about when do I have to really be more purposeful, more planful, and when can I just let it be more what we call incidental? Where can learning be incidental versus very planned? And that's an invitation for you to give yourself some grace and really use your limited time for planning and certainly for co-planning on those hard to reach spots. Let the other stuff come as either the unintended curriculum where we learn from our peers and being alive, or this incidental where we learn by being a part of something. Let me stop for just a second. Does that make sense to folks? Incidental, unintentional, and then sometimes we have to be very purposeful and very planned. And hopefully that gives you a sense of a little bit of grace or flexibility. Any comments? Drop them in the chat or drop them in the comments in Facebook if you like that kind of grace. I always like a little out. So differentiation not only comes in how we teach students, but it's in how we work with each other. So Cheryl, I'm thinking about you and Jen, and I'm thinking about others that are in co-teaching or in itinerant situations, or you're an inclusion facilitator or a coach. Everybody doesn't need the same amount. So every lesson, this goes for if you're a speech language pathologist, an occupational therapist, all of the related services folks also. Every lesson doesn't need this level of attention, and every outcome doesn't need this level of planning, but some really do. And so differentiation is more about equity than it is equality. Equality would be every outcome, every minute, every lesson, every goal has the same amount of my attention. Equity would be the ones that need it are the ones that are going to get it. And so we might start small. We might start with what's on fire. We might even start with what we're inspired by. So what looks interesting, what looks exciting. So it doesn't always have to be what's hard. Okay, so back to this. We have this thing in early childhood. Again, my colleague, Jennifer Grisham, some of the folks who helped write the Big Idea Glossary, we've called this many different things. So you'll hear me talk about lesson plan, activity plan, intentional instructional sequence, and then a really funny phrase called a power pack. Those are all the same thing. So a lesson plan, an activity plan, an intentional instructional sequence, and a power pack. It just depends on my mood, where I am in my life. Don't worry about any of that. Basically, I like boundaries that breathe. So I like, my friend Barb Avila taught me that, boundaries that breathe. I love frameworks. I love models. I love steps. I love sequences, but I love them to be able to be adaptable, customizable to my situation. So the framework or the sequence of your lesson design, for those at the Academy, Julie and Kate and I gave you, different structures already, and you can go back to those handouts. This is maybe even a little simpler of one, because this one you can pull it out of your toolkit just when you need it. So maybe the reading activity or the math activity, hopefully both of those are the same because they're integrated, is already planned. So if you're a special educator, you might look at a planned lesson. Maybe it's part of the district's curriculum, and you're going to overlay it with these 5 steps. Maybe you're really trying to be more play-based. So you're allowing kids to direct their play and their centers. However, you have specially designed instruction you're trying to weave in. So how do I take block area and what children are doing with loose parts and still have an element of a part that is intentional or planned? Does that make sense? I'm trying to marry self-directed play with intentional instruction. So these 5 columns are kind of this simple on the fly, do it on paper, do it in my mind, do it in a Google Drive document, doesn't matter. But I always start with what to teach. And so whether I'm teaching common outcomes, targeted outcomes, or individualized outcomes, I can still use this 5 steps. And that also makes it kind of versatile, if you will. So I'll highlight the 5, and then I'm going to show you a handout that unpacks it so you don't have to commit any of this to memory right now. This is like, okay, I get it, and here's where I can go for more information. So what to teach, when to teach, where to teach, what to teach with, and how to teach. I sometimes call this something like playing the game Clue, because if you think of Clue, it's like Colonel Mustard in the library with the candlestick. So drop it in the comment or in the chat. Do you remember playing Clue? And can you kind of understand that there were certain things, but they varied? Sometimes it's Miss Scarlet in the kitchen with the rope. And so I want you to think of those 5 elements, not always even in steps, but that I got to have all 5 elements in order to have a lesson, right? Yeah, one of my favorites too, Mary Beth. And so if you can kind of turn this into a game and says, okay, today during circle time, so let's go back to, I'll share my screen again. Oops, I got too many things open already somehow. Go here, turn that off, share my screen. Even if you just go what, when, where, with what, and how, then I can go, oh, sometimes I'm teaching at circle time. Sometimes I'm teaching at morning meeting. Sometimes I'm teaching at recess. And so sometimes the pivot point, if you will, is that I actually think about the time of day, especially if I'm an itinerant teacher or related service folks or a special educator who's trying to embed into an existing routine. Then I go, when am I going to visit that classroom? When am I going to be delivering specially designed instruction on their speech and language needs? So I sort of start in the when column, and then I go, okay, can't go any further. What's my what? So I go a little bit left. Then I finish the rest of the sequence. that make sense? So you could start in different places, but you always back up and go, okay, now that I know where I'm going to be, I'm at the carpet. I'm at small groups. I'm in the library. Okay, now I know where I am, but what am I teaching? So I always get you back to what before how. Sometimes, to be honest, I get excited about materials and I think about, oh, I really want to teach with these loose parts. I saw it on Pinterest. I'm super excited. I got a new book. It's about children learning about race in early childhood. I can't wait to read it. So I often get very excited about the material. Okay, great. Got a new puppet, got a new book, have some new loose parts. What's your what? So no matter kind of where I might get excited, I always make myself then go back to do the hard work, which is what am I teaching? Okay. So on your dashboard for the Summer Academy folks, there is a handout called an instructional guide. So I'm going to put it here in the chat. So if you want to link to it, you can. I'm going to put it in Facebook in the comments. And thanks, Rachel. She likes playing Clue too, Mary Beth. So maybe we need to get a game going. And then I'm going to hopefully share my screen. Let's see if this all works. Okay, so this handout, which you can link to in the chat or the comments, or just follow along with me. Again, you'll see my colleagues here, some great colleagues from Kentucky, from Iowa, and here in Ohio. This will unpack each of those parts. I'm going to scroll down of the clue game. So like Colonel Mustard in the library with the candlestick. We have the what, the when, the where, the with what, and the how. And so each of these is defined. So the what, common outcomes, targeted outcomes, individualized outcomes, the time of day, literally in preschool, we usually call it circle time, snack time, rest time, center time, like the word time is actually in it. In kindergarten, first grade, you might do it even by the clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock. The where, this is where you are going to teach. I'll unpack that. The objects, materials, toys, and things that you will have as the third object in the environment, and then the how. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time telling you a few key practices for each of these. We already did the what, and I'm going to unpack these and give you some strategies. So that's where we're headed. Questions, comments? Doing okay? You can also do your thumbs up, thumbs down. Let me know in the chat or in the comments if you're good to go. Thanks, Mary Beth. I'll pause and take a sip of my tea. This is a cup. It was a long, long story about red cups from my friends in Texas. So every time I take a sip, I think of my revolutionaries in Texas. All right, here we go. Stand up, move around, take a break as you need to. Here we go. We're going to talk about very quickly, just a reminder, I like to start with the big ideas. For those of you in the academy, you have the full big idea glossary. It's a product that we sell in my shop, and then we donate the proceeds to a charity every year, along with my co-authors. For those of you in Facebook, I'll give you a sample when I post later. So a big idea helps us take all the amazing things that young children are supposed to be learning and try to get it all figured out without getting so reductionist that we're only teaching facts and figures. It's a way to work smarter, not harder. And it's a way of helping students see the bigger idea of what they're learning. So just a reminder of why we love big ideas. Again, just as I was mentioning, the when, which is the second column, we always want to think of not just the time of day, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, but we can think about routine activities, especially for younger children. routines are a large part of their day. So routines are things like dressing and undressing, feeding or eating, napping and resting. And then certainly, depending on the program, if you're in a childcare Head Start, you'll probably have brushing your teeth, and you may even have sleeping. So these are the human routines that are necessary for humans to go through. And you want to think about them as well as transitions. And then, like we were talking about, the arc of the activity, how it begins and how it ends are also times to teach. And then when the child is with us and or not with us, and they may be with another adult in a different small group, in a different location, and so forth, even their parents. Okay, where to teach? I always think of a realtor when I think of this one, and it's location, location, location. So I usually say, okay, everybody thinks about teaching happening in the classroom, maybe even more finite, at this table, at this center, on this carpet square. So I like to go, okay, that's great, but widen it. Where else in the building do kids learn? What about outside the building? What about in the community? So kids have a 24-hour clock. Where are all the different places they learn? So that we think about instruction not just being kind of relevant to what's happening at 10 o'clock on the carpet square, but what's relevant in this child's life outside of the school building. And, you know, depending on when you're listening to this and what the state of affairs are in the world, many of us learned this during that first phase of the pandemic. When schools closed, we learned, wow, all right, kids have to be somewhere doing something. They're at childcare, they're with their families, they're with their neighbors. So we're really thinking about our work is to give kids the skills and knowledge they need for a 24-hour clock in multiple locations, not just in our reading area. And then when we think, this is probably my favorite, is to always think about the what to teach with. So we have a lot of resources in the guide and other things that I'll link to that talk about thinking about, okay, do I need books? If I do need books, what kind of books? Remember, Kate said earlier, making sure that what we're teaching is kids see themselves. So I would say if you learn nothing else in this whole academy, but you sit down with the materials in your classroom and say, do these classrooms materials represent the different identities that my children bring? And those identities, remember from day one, are race, gender expression and gender, ability, language, and all those things in that circle of the identity wheel. Do my kids see themselves in our books? The manipulatives, are they things that kids with different abilities with their hands or with their feet, even if you've met Tim Jin before, or with their eyes, can they explore their world? If we think about dolls and puppets and things like that, are those things that can represent them? And then if we think broadly about musical instruments, have we talked to those in our community about what are musical instruments that kids have exposure to? And then of course, my favorite is loose parts. So always thinking about how can I differentiate or broaden by thinking about the materials. Now, you might say, wait, Christy, we're doing a math lesson, or I got to embed math into all of this. So what am I doing? Well, I tell people, take something like measurement tools and really think them all the way through. Okay, what do I mean by that? So you might say, okay, what are all the different kinds of things we could measure with? What are all the different kinds of things that have containers with lids that could be used when we're measuring? What are all the different ways we could scoop? So have I broadened it from a hand shovel to an ice cream scooper so that I'm exposing kids to things that are scooping instruments, but also things that they see in their real world based upon where they live and what's going on in the community. So this is just a quick list of thinking about deeply the materials that we have and making sure there's a lot of variety. The last one is if you're thinking about the activity has a measurement outcome. This is how deep I might go in thinking about the materials. So remember, we have the 5 steps: what, when, where, with what, and how. I can stay on with what for quite a while. When I know that I'm teaching measurement, then I'm going to go, okay, let's see how creative we can be, team. What are standard tools for measuring across cultures, across products that we're measuring? And then what are non-standard tools for measuring? So let me stop here for a minute and invite you to take 2 minutes, and I'll watch the time, of just kind of quiet and think to yourself, okay, we started off with lesson planning, and Christy showed me these 5 things that are like the game clue. And I know that the first one is about my what. Have I thought deeply about when, where, and with what that allows me to differentiate, that allows me to support different learners' interests, preferences, and abilities? So let's just take 2 minutes, and I'll hide my camera so I'm not distracting you. And then when we come back, if you feel up to it, put a note or a phrase in the chat or the comments. So 2 minutes about what does it mean to look deeply at when, where, and with what as a means of differentiating. All right, friends, I forgot to set the timer, so I hope that gave you at least 1 minute. Anyone want to restate something, share an observation, or ask a question? And it's okay if we don't, but an observation, a wondering, a question. This is when I acknowledge I maybe stupefied you with my brilliance, right? So the idea is that these 5 parts of an intentional instructional sequence are things that you can do on the fly, and they're things that you could do to guide your lesson planning or your collaboration time. So they're really powerful, and that's why we call them power packs, because they allow you to kind of do that paradox of following children's lead and being intentional. And so I dropped in the chat and in the comments a template that you're welcome to use or create or reuse that has the 5 columns. So I'll just kind of walk you through that, but you have it if it's helpful as a handout. I put it in both places. You can make it a Google Drive document so that you can reuse or collaborate not in real time, but it's just what to teach, when to teach, where to teach, the materials you need, and then we're still getting to the how. Let me show you what a couple of these look like completed. So this is another link. You are welcome to go there now while I'm talking and or at any time. These are completed versions. So maybe y'all can help me pick a book. Which one do you want to do? Some of them you might know, some of them you might not know, like you might know The Very Hungry Caterpillar, but is there a book here that you'd like me to pick that might help me show you one that you're interested in? So this is how to do an intentional instructional sequence related to a book. Does anybody have a preference? Bad Day, Go Away. Okay, thanks, Mary Beth. This is one of my favorite ones too. So this is written by Sarah Cantor. She's a teacher here in Ohio, a good friend of mine. She wrote Bad Day, Go Away. I think I may have it in the closet, but I won't get up and look at it. So this might be a little visually overwhelming, but the idea is that this is a lesson plan that goes with a reading time. So this could be a read aloud, this could be a center, this could be all kinds of different variations of how you do reading instruction. It could be that we read it first as a whole group, and then kids have an opportunity to play with it. So I'm going to go from left to right to show you how this would look. And then once you get really skillful at the 5 steps, you don't need to write as much of this down. But if you have a paraprofessional, if you co-teach with another adult, this is one way you all get on the same page, especially if you are splitting up kids and they're going to rotate through centers. So let's say Mary Beth is reading and I'm doing an art project, and then kids are playing in the housekeeping area. And then they're going to move between those as they get tired. So somebody's kind of tired doing art with me, so they join Mary Beth at reading. This way, I know exactly what Mary Beth is covering, even as kids move in and out at will. So I don't have to worry. Now, people always say, oh, Christy, let me pause for a second. They always say, Christy, if you let kids choose, like, oh my gosh, they got to choose to leave the art activity. What if they don't get what you were teaching? They always go hang out with Mary Beth. They love her. They love Bad Day, Go Away. They never want to do art. Let me show you what happens, okay? So this is what happens if you're worried about kids choosing where to go. So first of all, Bad Day, Go Away. I know what Mary Beth is teaching. She's teaching attributes of texture and shape. She's teaching knowledge of the cause of something and the criteria that we group things. She's teaching classifying, reasoning, and is there more? That's enough, right? That's a lot. So these are the big standards. These are the Common Core. These are actually big ideas. And you will see that some things look like math, some things look like literacy, some things look like science, some things look like social emotional. Yes. So anytime. Now, what's beautiful is that it's not only during story time, but maybe when the kids pick a book at nap time, and I sit by a kid, I know I can teach these same things. When it's kind of quiet time, maybe you have a long transition in the morning before all the kids arrive because they have different schedules. So everybody's kind of doing something quiet. and or they're waiting. So because of where our bathroom is located, we have to all go to the bathroom at the same time. And we haven't yet figured out how to stagger that, but we're working on it. Okay, so I bring bad day, go away with me so that while we wait in the hall for the other kids to use the bathroom, kids are reading the book, I am still teaching these things. That way, I don't have to worry about if the kid never went to Mary Beth's activity. But in my example, I said, oh, wait, there was a kid that didn't ever want to do creative stuff. Well, guess what? I can read this book while kids are doing art. I can also totally change it up, teach these same things, and then change the rest of this middle part. So Mary Beth and I can both agree we're teaching this stuff. She's going to teach it during story time. I'm going to teach it during art. She's going to be in the book nook. I'm going to be at the art center. She's going to use Bad Day Go Away. I'm going to use maybe a puppet that's going to tell the story as they create a book called Bad Day Go Away. Does that make sense? So you can mix and match these in any way you want. Or I could say, nope, I'm not teaching the same outcomes as Mary Beth, and I have a different sequence for the art area so she knows what I'm teaching. But what we've got to start to do is become fluid in knowing who's teaching what, when it's being taught, so that if somebody comes to evaluate me and they're like, hey, it looks like you're just playing, I can whip this out and say, yes, when we play, we learn attributes, cause, classifying, reasoning. And I haven't even talked to you about my instructional strategies. So that's a quick look of where we're going, but I'm building. I know what I'm teaching. I know when, I know where, I know what I'm teaching with. So that could be a foldable. I could fold that up. I could laminate it. I could staple it with the book so that this becomes this match that we have done some planning. Let's say Cheryl and I are teaching, but Cheryl has 8 classrooms she's got to make it to. So she doesn't have time to be with me, but we can plan because I know I'm going to read these books about feelings and big emotions for the next 9 months, right, the whole school year. And so she's going to help me plan, how can I do it? Now, Cheryl's like, but Christy, I've got some IEP goals and I don't know any kids who are ready for reasoning. We're still looking at joint attention. We're still looking at something that's basic about bilateral motor coordination. We're still looking at very early one-to-one correspondence. We're still looking at, no worries. When you look at some of these examples that are completed for you, you will see the tiering. So the outcome changes. So now not just reasoning, but I might teach something like joint attention. So now I'm teaching reasoning and joint attention in the same activity. And then when I get to the how, I can talk about how would I support a student who's learning joint attention during story time or during art, while at the same time being exposed to reasoning. But my expectation is not that that child engage in reasoning, but they're exposed to it because of the layering of outcomes. So y'all are awfully quiet. So hopefully I'm not just talking at you at a rate that is impossible to follow here. So these are created, they're called power packs, and we've created a lot of them for things like the Very Hungry Caterpillar. And all of these are teaching common outcomes. As you dig into this work more, you will see even an app that helps you do this. And I was trying to see if I had one more that I wanted to show you. No, not here. But it will show you how to teach different outcomes in the same activity. Okay. This is the last chunk. And so this last chunk is about matching the what and the how. So even if you skipped the middle part, which is when and where and with what, I want you to think of a coin. And a coin has two sides to it. I thought I had a coin in my drawer, but I don't have one. There are two sides to the coin. And this is what we call a match. When we're embedding instruction, when we're delivering specially designed instruction, we want to create a match. So how often do I need to teach and what level of precision? So way back when we first started, I said, the way we tier is different outcomes, different frequency, and different precision. So what are we looking at here? I call this X marks the spot. The way you can think about it is like in a football, goal posts. And this comes from some research from Mark Woolery and Diane Sanada. It's pretty old in terms of when it first came out, which was in the mid 90s. But the research on embedding has continued to find this to be true. What is this? Okay, so goalposts have two uprights and a crossbar. So if that kind of helps you, make a goalpost. And if you're drawing or doodling, go ahead and draw like a football goalpost with two uprights and a crossbar. The crossbar is going from the bottom bar, goes from left to right. So from left to right is what we call adult mediation. I sometimes call this effort, precision, how much you're just kind of blowing in the wind and planning, and how much you just kind of let it go. Okay. So if you're in the low, this is sort of like I put the toy or the material out and somebody learned something. Woohoo. Right. It's like, I didn't plan it. I didn't write it all out. I didn't collaborate over it. I just put some loose parts out and some kids learned. That's what we call low adult mediation. The adult didn't need to mediate much to have it work. Sometimes we call these invisible supports, natural supports, environmental supports, things that are just kind of built in. Unfortunately, sometimes picking the right it takes planning. But it doesn't take a lot of in the moment effort. So those of you who are itinerant, or if you're coming and going, you might really be thinking, when I'm not there to support this gen ed teacher, what could I leave behind? What could be so powerful that kids trip over it and learn? That would be an amazing gift. So it goes from left to right on that bottom bar, all the way to high mediation. This is a lot of adult involvement, a lot of adult direct teaching, modeling, clarifying, correcting, restating, scaffolding, all of that. Okay. So if you kind of get that, you're going to move across that crossbar all day long. Every lesson should require different amount of adult mediation. If everything has to pass through you for children to learn, inclusion will not work. Peers have to be a part of the mixture. Children on their own have to be part of the mixture. The environment, parents, related service, paras, co-teachers, all part of the mixture. Okay, that's the crossbar. Now the uprights. On the left-hand side, it goes from bottom to top, and on the right-hand side, it goes from bottom to top. So of those crossbars, it goes low to high, low to high. So if you want a high probability of the child to initiate something, to greet, to ask, to solve a problem, to participate. Sorry if I already said that. So the child is going to be the doer. If you want, that's your hope, that's your goal, that's your outcome, that the child will sort, will classify, will answer, will count, right? The kid's doing it. You need to pair it with a low amount of adult mediation. Because when we ask or drill the kid, they are now in a responder. They don't get to initiate it. On the flip side of the other, if there's a high probability that you want the child to do a very specific thing, so you say, how many cups are there? And you want the kid to tell you, there are 5 cups. It's going to take a lot of high level of adult mediation to get a very specific response from the kid, and everything in between. So depending on your outcome, is the kid the responder, the initiator, or is the kid the responder in a very specific way, will depend on your role. So the X marks the spot is saying, if you want a high probability of success that the child will initiate, do low adult mediation. Conversely, if you want a high probability that the child will exhibit a specific behavior, you're going to need a lot more adult mediation. And so what we want to be careful is that we understand we don't always want high specific response, high teacher led. That there's all this beautiful learning in between and all this beautiful learning on the far side. So let me stop sharing my screen for a second. What that's saying is that we have to match the outcome with how often we teach and how we teach and the level of precision and our involvement and all of that. So again, as you're thinking about embedding specially designed instruction into daily activities, you might go, wow, we've got a lot of kids with a lot of needs. How can we scale back on all the effort we're putting into teaching common outcomes that really kids should just get by hanging out in kindergarten? Like, I really don't need to be doing that level of direct instruction. And there does, errorless learning is not that important. But there are some skills, because these kindergartners are still 5. They're still learning self-regulation. They've never been in a group setting. They're living during a pandemic. What do we need to more intentionally or more precisely or more frequently support, mediate, and give feedback on? So these are the decisions we start making as we make that grid, that power pack of what, when, maybe only one activity, maybe 16 different parts of the day, where, maybe only one place, maybe all places, with what, and then how. So let me show you a couple of hows and we'll wrap it up. If you've got a question, a comment, say, Christy, slow down, pause, breathe. My brain has to think. So we're going to go back to those completed activities like the bad day go away. And we're going to look at the very last column. So here we are. Still, we got it. Colonel Mustard in the library with the candlestick. Fine. I'm teaching attributes about shape and texture at story time in the large group area with bad day go away. Now my question is, how do I do this? And so again, I look at the X marks the spot. Do I want kids to tell me things, answer things, sort things, classify things? Okay, I could use self-talk. Self-talk is a very indirect, low adult mediated strategy. So self-talk is where I do not prompt the learner. I just talk about my own learning. So I could be in the block area, in the book area. I have the book, and I would say something like, the rainbow has curved edges. I'm not saying, hey, kids, what shape is the rainbow? What colors are the rainbow? How do you think the rainbow feels? Nope. No questions, no directions. I just purely say the book is square. I can see that the heart is a different shape than the cloud. I'm just narrating out loud. That allows for kids to respond, to initiate in that goalpost that's much higher because I'm using low adult mediation. Brainstorming is kind of a middle ground one on that crossbar. It's kind of in the middle. It allows me to say, okay, guys, tell me all the reasons that you think the little girl in the story was having a bad day. And I have a flip chart piece of paper or a smart board, and we're going to just write all the reasons you think. You can show me with your face. You can tell me it. You can write it down. Why do you think she was having a bad day? So that's in the middle. Kind of an invitation. It takes me, but kids can go in all kinds of directions. So those are two examples of how I matched the level of involvement, the level of adult mediation with what I wanted in the end. And then again, I can take this entire lesson and layer it with targeted outcomes, things kids are struggling with, or individualized outcomes, which could include IEP goals. And so we have examples you can download that show you how to do specially designed instruction on top of. So Cheryl, I'm thinking of you, but there's another whole column over here that says, how would I do specially designed instruction while Jen or somebody is reading the story? And so that's how we start to bring gen ed and special ed together. Remember, it's a layering of paint versus pushing in, pulling out, pulling aside. And we start to layer it into or embed into. Okay. So that is lesson design in play. And you can start to do this on the fly, that you can just notice what kids are interested in and go, okay, I see this kid, they're in the block area and they're starting to make some sort of structure, or they're in the housekeeping area and they're dumping everything out of the cupboards. Okay, what does that tell me? What are they learning? I already know where I am, what time of day it is. I already know the materials, skip over them and jump straight to, I understand that you are doing simple motor actions. And how am I going to teach that you can start to use objects in a functional way? I already noticed that you're building structures. How can I match and deliver specially designed instruction around self-regulation or classifying and comparing? Okay. So let me do this. I'm going to stop going on Facebook Live, and we're going to get a little closure to our Summer Academy Day 2.